for the Mozilla Foundation.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's wonderful to be here and to be representing Mozilla and to honor Erin's legacy today. As Lisa mentioned, I'm Ashley Boyd. I'm the Vice President of Advocacy at the Mozilla Foundation. And Mozilla's larger mission is to ensure the internet as a global resource, open and accessible for all. Our principles are enshrined in the Mozilla Manifesto, and these are 14 principles that we're committed to in doing our work. They're things like privacy and security, transparency, openness, digital inclusion. And if you haven't read them before or haven't read them in a while, I really encourage you to do so. I feel like there aren't enough manifestos in the world that are grounding our work and inspiring us. So I love working under a manifesto, and I love for it to inspire others as well. Many of you are familiar with Firefox, our signature product, which demonstrates these principles in a mass consumer product. And the Mozilla Foundation, where I work, supports the Mozilla mission by fueling a global movement for internet health. In practice, this means that we launch campaigns for change, and we support the leaders around the world who are working to make the internet healthier by addressing its major challenges and taking advantage of its opportunities. And I'll give you examples of that work in just a minute. But first I wanted to say that, in these really challenging times, I think that many of us, and definitely me, have been thinking about whether or not our work is making a difference. We're wondering whether the things that we're doing are adding up to meet the moment, and whether maybe we're leaving a small legacy to make the world better. And I think that remembering Erin's work is actually a great recommitment to saying, yes, one person can make a difference. We can make even a bigger difference when we work together. And it's time for us to kind of recommit and work as if our efforts make a whole lot of change and make a difference. So that's sort of the recommitment that I'm making today, is to believe in my work and believe the change that it can bring about. But first, I wanted to share, this is how I feel most days, these days. It just feels like every day is sort of one new dumpster fire after the other. And I think the dumpster fire effects takes has two strains. One is, a public awareness about the issues that we know have been problems and have been known problems for years. So it's like, yeah, we've been talking about this and droning on about it. Thanks for joining us and understanding how terrible this is. And then there are definitely revelations that are new even to us and show some of the deep systems level problems that the internet faces.
Closer to you.
Oh, sure.
So we can hear you better.
Oh, great.
Okay.
Yeah.
So talk like normal.
Okay.
Is that better?
Yeah. So these are just a few headlines that we've all seen. I mean, we could do this every day of the week, right? There are things like this. But even trying to pull it up a level, I think there are some, sort of themes that we're seeing emerge. We're seeing firsthand how a centralized web creates a sense of invincibility that fosters terrible decisions that actually face little to no consequences. We're seeing that people are getting denied because of algorithms the care that they need. I heard a really chilling story recently about how in Arkansas, the computer told the home health worker that none of their patients were able to have more than 5 hours of home health care, even if they were paraplegic and couldn't eat without the help of home health care. And no one feels responsible or accountable for this algorithm's limits. That's really upsetting and worrisome at a big scale. Women and other marginalized voices are harassed, trolled, and threatened just for speaking their truth online or stating even just general comments. So feeling defeated is definitely logical, but it's a little bit dangerous. It's actually problematic for us and where we want to go. So I understand it, but I'm going to urge us to push outside of that. And so on the positive side, there have been some wonderful trends of late. We saw that in the US, 22 million comments were submitted to the FCC about net neutrality. We probably know that people don't understand in depth what net neutrality means for them, but they understand that it's something that is protecting their online life and access to information they want. And that's really, really positive. In Europe, we saw that the GDPR was introduced after a lot of public agitation and support for it. And we still need to see whether GDPR changes data practices, but the way that it changes the balance of power between data collectors and users is pretty profound and really exciting. In India, we saw the communities that we work with and many, many more fighting against the biometric database that the government has created, Aadhaar. And there have been some really important victories on the court level recently in which the Indian courts have said that Aadhaar cannot be used by corporate entities. It can be used by the government, but not corporate entities, and that's a really positive sign of progress. And finally, we've heard, for the first time at scale, tech workers fighting back against building products and services that fuel the military and police. These are all really, really good signs, and signs that it's time to dig in and get more active and get bigger. So at Mozilla, the way that we're approaching this moment is to really bring our message, and that's part of the reason why we've talked about it as internet health, bring this internet health message to a broader public. Our issues can be complicated and a little mysterious, but because the internet is everywhere, we have such an opportunity to bring our issues and talk about their relevance where people are. And we've been focusing on Mozilla about where people are in terms of the products that are in their homes, that their children use, and opportunities that lie there to activate people. My goal when we're thinking about this work is to show that consumers, internet users, care. They care about how their products are designed, what impacts they have, and to give a broad public the opportunity to show that they care. And we're doing those in small, micro moments around some specific products to start. And I want to give you a first example. So this is Cloud Pets. It was a toy that was being sold in the United States. It had been largely phased out in Europe. The design was that it would allow parents to record messages for their kids so that they could hear it. So the messages would be recorded and then accessed through the cloud. And it was not hugely popular, but was being sold. And there had been many reports about the security concerns related to this toy. In fact, there was a repo on GitHub that described in detail how to hack this toy. The manufacturer had been aware of it and did nothing. And in fact, the manufacturer was steadily going out of business and let the core help descriptions and instructions wither online. At one point, part of their website infrastructure was actually for sale. So they were not keeping it up, and they weren't in any way making themselves a resource for users who had bought this toy and wanted to secure it. And so this offered a really interesting opportunity here to show that an extremely unsafe product was being sold in major online stores, including Amazon, Walmart, Target, and eBay. So we actually, as Mozilla, commissioned a security review to show, really verify the security concerns. We developed a call to action with 13 other organizations, including organizations like EFF, Color of Change, and Common Sense Media, and many more, calling on the retailers to stop carrying this product. Our theory was retailers don't really care about an individual product as much as the manufacturers do. And they have a brand. They have a brand to protect in not selling an unsafe toy. At one point, we actually thought about using Amazon's policy that they wouldn't sell surveillance equipment as a sort of a strategy to get it off Amazon. But the point was, this is a very unsafe toy, and it shouldn't be on your marketplaces. We did a whole campaign. We were ready to go. We had the sign-on letter from the 13 organizations. We went out actually to the media. We did an embargoed release. The media contacted Amazon and Walmart, Target, and before we could launch the campaign, the product was pulled because they saw what we saw, which is this shouldn't have been there in the first place. So we saw that as a really good sign that there's a lot more opportunity to push on the retail space and to keep sending this message that a lot of the stuff on the shelves, on the online shelves and physical shelves, should not be there based on security concerns. Now, this is just one toy. People say, well, it's just one toy. The company was going out of business. I think the fact that the company was going out of business makes it more relevant. But the point here is that this is sort of a smaller moment that's designed to add up to bigger moments, to show that people care, that people don't want these products, and they want better. There's another example I wanted to share, which is this website called Public by Default. It was actually one of our media fellows at Mozilla, Hong Di-duk. She created this website. She used information from Venmo. Venmo is an app available in the US. It is actually owned now by PayPal, and it facilitates financial transactions between individuals, and it adds social networking. Seems like a really bad combination to me, but this was good enough for PayPal. And the real zinger here is that the transactions on Venmo are public by default. So when I send my sister $50 to give her my share of the wine that we consumed the night before, and I send her $50 and I have wine emojis, it's there ready to go in a scrolling fashion to anyone who's using the app at the time. Hung also found that a record 207 million transactions were available on a publicly accessible website. She downloaded them because there was no reason not to, and it was publicly available. And she created this website, which is really fun if you have time to check it out. And it basically creates personas, very inferable personas about people who have transactions on Venmo. It includes details about I can't remember which one it is. Well, there's an exchange between a couple that gets connected, then they have fights, a lot of financial transactions in the midst of this. One of the most concerning ones is actually a woman who clearly visits a certain food truck, and the Venmo transactions are available. So for people who are concerned about safety of women and domestic violence survivors, the food truck is very easy to find. So real safety concerns there. And there's one gentleman who is clearly peddling in either cannabis plus, but he has a high number of transactions from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. He gives money to other people, so the pattern is very easy to infer. So kind of crazy that this is public by default. The FTC actually had an order against Venmo to increase the clarity of their privacy settings to make it easier to make these private, but still, it's public by default. So we ran a campaign against this. We actually delivered 25,000 petition signatures from US consumers to Venmo saying, hey, this is not what we want. We want you to make it private by default. And we got a bit of a chilly response from Venmo, but that's fine. We would expect that. We also commissioned a poll which asked people, did you know that this was a feature? Is this something that you want? And overwhelmingly, regardless of age, people said this is not a feature that they value in their financial app, and they supported this private by default ask. So this campaign continues. This is a big player. PayPal owns this app, as I mentioned. So, we'll see where it goes. There was a press report in August. We launched a campaign in July. There was a press report in August that PayPal was considering changing the settings. So we know that they've heard us. And really the design here is, again, to show consumer
resistance to this approach. This may have been a college student's, and this app was developed by college students. This may have been a college student's great idea, but it's not something that people want or need. So to create resistance there, and the goal is to get in the head of people who make products like this and think, maybe we shouldn't do this. The last time something like this happened, there was an outcry about it. And so that is really one of the goals here, even if this campaign doesn't win, but we're going to keep at it. So another way that Mozilla is really leading kind of with grassroots power is actually in our work around innovation challenges. We give awards to individuals who are doing amazing open source work. The idea is to empower bright ideas and those that are ready to scale by giving them additional resources and supporting them with the expertise of Mozilla and really putting out the word about their work. One of our most recent challenges was the Wireless Innovation for a Network Society Wins, which was supporting community technologists who are bringing rural areas online. This is such a big issue even within the United States, and we know that worldwide only 50% of folks are online. And one of the technologists who won was in rural Tennessee, and they were using it was a band of technologists. So they got together, which is part of the great thing about this work, is the communities come together, and they brought a broadband tower to rural Tennessee. Right now, I'm showing you the Responsible Computer Science Challenge. This was announced a couple of weeks ago. Actually, it got some great traction, and people were really excited about this. The idea here is to really support the growth that's happening around ethical computer science curriculum. We know it's happening, but it's not happening fast or as broadly enough. So the awards here go to support computer science professors who are developing curriculum that can be open source and used by other academic institutions, and to really change the way computer scientists and technologists see their role in society, to see that they have a role in making great products that make society stronger too. So I wanted to reflect back. I'm actually new to this field, and I've actually worked most recently in healthcare reform in the US, which was a long slog. And definitely had highs and lows. So when I think about this work, the work that's ahead, and why I think we can't despair in moments of these moments of overwhelm, is just to think about other movements who've been through tough times and who are really in it for the long haul. So when I started working on healthcare reform almost 10 years ago, we were working on the smallest levels. We were working around children's healthcare reform and trying to make sure that every child in the US had access to healthcare. And you would think this is the most modest of goals, and it was, and we knew it was. It was almost painfully modest. Like, we thought, oh, we know what we really want. This is just sort of silly to be asking for this just for kids. But it was a way in to start talking to policymakers and the public about the relationship between health and wellness overall and the economy. And it worked. And we saw very soon after healthcare reform for kids and protections there got embedded into our society, it was not too long before we started talking about healthcare for all. And I pull up this article just to see how far we've come. Those of you who may remember, in 2010, after health reform was passed, a number of House members in the Congress lost their seats because they supported healthcare reform. Now, in a very short time, we've seen the opposite. So this woman was running against an incumbent in the Houston area, 9-term incumbent. Voted to gut healthcare reform. Polls throughout the campaign showed that people were significantly less likely to support him now because he voted against healthcare reform. And she ended up flipping the seat. So that's a very inspiring and important story to talk about but big change and how we need to be in this for the long term, but also how big change can happen quickly. And we in the internet health movement, and at Mozilla, we often think about the environmental health movement as a real inspiration. If we think about the role that Rachel Carson played in putting out a clarion call about why clarion call to people who love the natural world, what was at stake, it really did, in a relatively short amount of time, lead to a change in the marketplace about what people expected, what people want, what people would pay extra for. And we see a real change now from not just what is the minimum we can do around climate change action, but what can we do that's even more and greater? And we think that if we work hard together and stay focused and put together a number of small wins, as modest as they seem at the time, if we rack those up and show that change is possible to those who are with us and those who will be with us, we can get there and build a strong movement for the future and for all of those who need us for a strong, open, and healthy internet. So this is a way to stay connected with us at the foundation.mozilla.org, and that's my Twitter handle for questions and comments for me there.
Thank you. And now we're going to see if does anybody has any questions? Does anybody have any questions for Ashley? I know, it was pretty straightforward, huh?
Let's do this.
All right. All right. So thank you very much, everybody. Ashley Boyd.
Thank you.
And next is Erin Gallagher. Erin, could you come up? You got everything?
Yes, her computer's right.
Oh, her computer's
make sure
great. Oh, so did you? Yeah, actually get that set up and I'll see something. Okie doke. So next up will be Erin Gallagher. And Erin has been doing these incredible visualizations with often Twitter data is the stuff that caught my eye. And, you know, after an emergency situation, after a hurricane or an earthquake or something like that, social media has proven to be a very powerful tool. And hashtags, certain hashtags will be used sometimes to gather people to help, or if you're looking to find out if people are okay and things like that. And so she likes to look back over that data after it happens and make sense of it, which helps us the next time for the next disaster and stuff like that. And so, ladies and gentlemen, Erin Gallagher.
Thanks. This work here? A little shorter.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And remember to speak right into the puppy.
Okay.
Is that good? Is that good?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's good.
That's all right? Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me here today. Thank you, Lisa. It's really an honor to be here. My name is Erin Gallagher. I am an artist, and I've been making graphs of Twitter networks for almost 2 years now. I work with an open source network visualization software called Gephi. And I'm going to show you today some of my work that I've done over the past 2 years. So in October 2017, we found out that the infamous Tennessee GOP parody account was operated by a Russian troll farm. And I knew I had several data sets that included that account. So I circled back to graphs that I had made during the year and worked with Charlie Warzel from BuzzFeed, and he published several of them. But at the time, because I was focused on that single account, we missed the bigger picture. So my presentation today contains some of those same slides and some new ones that I haven't published before. I captured 10 hashtags that were used during 6 alt-right protests throughout 2017. And there was a trend that ran through all of them. First, I want to introduce this concept that I learned from Mexican anthropologist Dr. Rosana Reguillo called activismo combinado, or combined activism. It refers to the street media relationship of social movements, or how social media affects street protests and vice versa. The idea is that social movements progress with coordinated and collaborative intelligence Street protests are empowered and enhanced by social media, and social media bolsters the presence of people in the streets. This was true for the Arab Spring, Occupy Wall Street, 15M of Spain, Yo Soy 132 of Mexico, and it's true for the alt-right as well. 2017 was a great year for the white nationalist movement. For every network I looked at in 2017 protests, the alt-right dominated the hashtags, and were met with almost zero digital resistance online. They dominated the hashtags, they controlled the narratives online, and that directly influenced the media. And it was all the media, right? Not just Fox News and Breitbart. So I want to circle back again to these hashtags today and look at them from a different perspective. Instead of zooming in on individual accounts, we're going to zoom out and look at the panorama. Starting in Berkeley. On April 15th, there was a pro-Trump free speech rally, which turned into violent street battles between anti-fascists and far-right protesters, including the Proud Boys, Identity Europa, assorted white nationalists who had throughout the day made Nazi salutes and held up anti-Semitic signs and other neo-Nazi symbolism. This is a user-to-user network for 5,117 hashtag Berkeley tweets from April 14th to April 19th. You can see up here in the right quadrant, you have a few sort of resistance accounts, RVA Wonk, Sub-Zero V. But overall, the alt-right dominated this hashtag. Tennessee GOP account is obviously here in this network. You got Brittany Pettibone, Big Alaska, Lauren Southern, Norwegian. I also captured hashtag Antifa, which was associated with the Berkeley protests. This is a user-to-user network for 51,271 hashtag Antifa tweets from April 14th to April 19th. And once again, up in the top right quadrant, you have some leftist accounts, just really one small community on their own. And the alt-right dominated this entire hashtag. This is Christy Chat, I think the account is called. Leah R77 is pretty well-known pro-Trump troll. Moving on to June. Another pro-Trump free speech rally was held on June 5th in Portland. This event was held not long after a white nationalist stabbed two men who were defending Muslim women on a train from what police described as a barrage of hate speech. This is the user-to-user network for 23,948 hashtag Portland tweets from June 4th to June 10th. And this network is sort of divided in thirds. So down here on the bottom, you have some resistance accounts, Muslim IQ, RVA Wonk again. In the center, you have It's Going Down News and some local Portland journalists. It's Mike Bivens is here in the red community. This is an NBC affiliate. And on the top is the alt-right. So it was, again, divided into thirds, but they were still a significant presence in this hashtag network. And real Donald Trump is in this account, in this network. Now, he didn't tweet the hashtag, but the alt-right constantly tags him on Twitter all day long, so he's basically in all of these networks. So they're tagging him in tweets or talking in his mentions, and that's how he ends up in all these networks. Also, the Portland police, I'm not sure if they tweeted the hashtag or not. They may have, but. I also looked at hashtag Antifa, which was associated with the Portland protests. This is the user-to-user network for 20,509 hashtag Antifa tweets from June 4th to June 10th. And up here in the top, you have Mike Bivens again, as a local Portland journalist. The NBC affiliate, just some small pockets of resistance on the top. But again, the alt-right dominated this entire conversation. Again, you can see the POTUS count is down here. I'm sure he didn't tweet hashtag Antifa, but that's why he's included in these networks. Moving on to about a week later in June, nationwide protests were held on June 10th under the hashtag March Against Sharia. This was demonstration sponsored by Act for America, which the Southern Poverty Law Center designates as an anti-Muslim hate group. Counter demonstrations were also held in several cities. This is the user-to-user network for 20,295 March Against Sharia tweets from June 10th to June 13th. And again, here on the lower left quadrant, you can see some resistance accounts. There's Muslim IQ, RVA Wonk, are constant presences in these networks. But you can see how they're sort of detached from the rest of the network. They're not connected, really. And the alt-right dominated this hashtag. Tennessee GOP was in this hashtag as well. They're up here on the top. Prison Planet, Bridget Gabriel. I also captured hashtag Antifa that was linked to the March Against Sharia marches. This is the user-to-user network for 20,901 hashtag Antifa tweets from June 10th to June 13th. Now, journalist Alexander Rubinstein is in the center of the hashtag Antifa network. He was reporting from and live tweeting the protests in New York City. Now, Alexander takes a lot of crap online from the left and the right. He has worked for RT America and Sputnik, and so he's frequently accused of spreading Kremlin propaganda. But it's important to look at the tweets that created these patterns to understand why he's in the center of this network. So Alexander tweeted something like 40 tweets that day. But only 2 of them got picked up by the alt-right. These 2. He was trying to interview Lauren Southern and ask her about her stunt blocking refugee boats off the coast of Libya with Defend Europe, and someone threw urine at her. So he had videos of this, and he tweeted out 2 tweets. The first one got just a little over 300 retweets and almost 400 likes, and the second got a little over 3,000 retweets and 3,000 likes. But if you look at his other tweets from that day, none of which were widely spread by the alt-right, I thought he did a good job reporting from the ground. He's got counter-protesters standing up against Islamophobic harassment, Kyrgyzstan flags. This is an anti-Sharia protester with a flag of a helicopter, throwing people out of a helicopter. He documented Identity Europa. Leader of the Proud Boys, Gavin McGinnis, giving a speech, and some anti-Sharia protesters who he had seen with Richard Spencer. Some of his other tweets: New Yorkers cheering on the Antifa crowd. And the side of the anti-Sharia side pretty much dwindled. So Alexander's in the center of this graph because those 2 tweets were retweeted a lot by all these various accounts in the network. But his node is not the same color as those accounts. That's because he's not a part of their community. Moving on to July, This was the meme war was the 4chan operation to troll CNN in retaliation for the network threatening to dox the creator of a GIF that Donald Trump tweeted. I published a longer analysis of hashtag meme war on my Medium blog, so I didn't go into great detail of it here, but I wanted to. Oh, that was the GIF that he tweeted. So this was a user to hashtag network for hashtag meme war, 20,072 tweets from July 5th to July 12th. User to hashtag network means that the hashtags are the dominant nodes. And again, I have more detailed analysis, but I want to be sure to include this because I feel like it was part of the wider trend. Unite the Right. On August 11th and 12th, far-right rallies in Charlottesville, Virginia, where a white nationalist plowed his car into a crowd of counter-protesters, murdering Heather Heyer. This is the user-to-user network for 23,998 Unite the Right tweets from August 12th to August 14th. Out here on the perimeter, you have some resistance. There's Ayn Rand, Paul Ryan, RVA Wonk. This is Unicorn Riot. This is Alexander Rubinstein. But the alt-right dominated this hashtag. The Poll News Network was one of the very influential nodes. Oops. In October, a neo-Nazi protest was held in Shelbyville, Tennessee. This was the second largest far-right gathering after Unite the Right, and it involved several of the same organizers. I captured 21,374 hashtag White Lives Matters tweets from October 28th to October 29th. I'm sorry, October 26th to October 29th. And this network is kind of split in half. So you have some resistance down here on the bottom, and the alt-right on the top. But again, still a very significant presence in this hashtag. Again, I captured hashtag Antifa that was linked to the White Lives Matter protests. This is a user-to-user network for 6,597 hashtag Antifa tweets from October 28th till October 29th. There are a few small resistance accounts on the bottom here. But again, the alt-right dominated the hashtag. Now, I didn't get to capture any more protests until April of this year, 2018. But this hashtag was a little different. This was a neo-Nazi rally outside of Atlanta, Georgia on April 21st. It only drew about 24 supporters, and the alt-right didn't dominate this trend. This is the user-to-user network for 25,391 hashtag Noonan tweets from April 12th to April 23rd. And you've got several journalists and some local people who were tweeting from the grounds. There was one pretty infamous alt-right troll that was tweeting in this hashtag. I will red pill you. Some people are familiar with him. That account's been suspended since. But overall, the alt-right were not a big influence in the Noonan protests online. Now, I don't know if this was just a fluke, and I haven't had the opportunity to look at any other alt-right protest-related hashtags since this, but it did seem like a departure from what I saw in 2017. This is a user-to-hashtag graph for 25,391 hashtag Noonan tweets from April 12th to April 23rd. You've got some, hashtag retweet, Nazi, Noonan strong. This is, I think podcast closer. There we go. No Nazi Noonan. This is All Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter, and the hashtag The Resistance and Combat Vets Resist, and these small pockets up top. So I could probably spend weeks or even months microanalyzing all of these networks, and we can sort out approximately how many bots and trolls and brand new fake accounts and high-volume spammers tweeted these hashtags and boosted the trends. But the alt-right doesn't care if there are bots or not. They don't care if there are fake accounts or trolls, Russian or otherwise. They don't care. All that matters is that they have had the appearance of being popular on social media. The optics are all that matters, and the optics are always in their favor. Their activity is constant. Their messaging is consistent over time. They roll with the news cycles, they jam the media, and they don't stop. It's not enough to throw a big street march once or twice a year, and it's not enough for a handful of large resistance accounts to hit back at them online. I don't know if there's a way to turn this trend around, and I don't even know what needs to be done. But a sense of majority can only arise among marginalized groups if the actual majority is silent, and this needs to change. I started this collection at the Internet Archive last year so we could have a database of social media analysis, mostly to use as a benchmark, because when I started making graphs, I didn't have much previous work to refer to. I haven't had much time to maintain it yet, but I'm hoping to add a lot more graphs soon. So if you know someone who makes graphs of social media networks, would like to add their work to this collection, please send me a DM on Twitter or get in touch with me, and I can have them set up as contributors. I'll also be uploading all these graphs when I get home after the event so that you can look at them more closely. And thank you very much.
Any questions for Erin? Yes. Stand up.
Hello, Erin. Thank you for your presentation.
You're welcome.
So how much of a good job are, I guess, companies like Twitter doing to try to shut down some of these bots and all?
They're trying. I think Twitter is trying more than most. It's really hard to say because what gets released publicly we don't know, and oftentimes especially on Facebook, honestly I think Facebook is probably 1,000 times worse than Twitter. Twitter, for at least, is open with what they're doing. I mean, the fact that I can access their data at all is sort of a testament to Twitter, I think. And I think that's also a reason why they take a lot of heat, because researchers can access the data, so we know more about what's going on Twitter, but we don't really have much information on Facebook or Instagram. I think that they're trying, and I think that as far as the bots go, I think that mostly falls under the general category of spam, which I feel like eventually they're going to get a hold on that. But the real issue is trolling. These are real. A lot of these are real people, right? It's not just automated accounts, and they know how to get around the rules. So it's. I think it's going to be a constant battle, basically. Yeah.
Okay, well, I got a couple of questions because this is all really fascinating, and I'm wondering. So you're talking about how the alt-right uses trolls, or sorry, not trolls, but they've got all these bots. I want to ask about the bots, Erin. Okay, I want to find out if there's any way. Are you saying that the news media, with all this bot activity, is stupid enough to look at Twitter and say, "Oh, the alt-right activity among alt-right humans was very popular today"?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not just bots. They have this huge network of people with blue check celebrities, and their network together is very powerful. So, I think a lot of people there's a lot of panic about bots, and I feel like they're eventually going to get a hold of that, but it's a huge machine, right? It's like the bots are just one component. So it's sort of a machine that is very good. It's very effective at what they do, and they can just sort of whip up a hashtag online and just dominate the narratives on social media. It's not just Twitter, obviously. I only just looked at Twitter myself, but this is cross-platform. So these are the narratives, the conversations that are happening online while these protests are going on the grounds.
So you're saying there are humans in the mix. And what do you mean celebrity
Like
alt-right?
real
What do you mean? Oh, you mean like celebrity alt-right racist Nazi humans? Oh,
Those three,
okay. Okay, just to clarify what we're talking about here, because I hate the alt-right anyway. I hate using that word.
Yeah.
I just like to call these people what they are. So we're talking about celebrities that boost the Twitter traffic in between the bots, or to get it started, certainly. Okay.
Influencers.
Okay, influencers. And what other, any other influencers just off the top of your head besides James Wood?
I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot of, sort of journalists, if you call them that.
Don't call them journalists if
Right.
they're not. Are they journalists?
Pseudo-journalists, I'd call them. And then there's all these, like, really random, they're huge accounts. I think they work out of, like, Twitter rooms. So I think they're sort of organizing online. And, they just have, like, Trump branding, and it'll be just, some woman's profile, and you don't know if it's a real person or not. But they have 50,000 followers. So, it's really hard to tell if are they automated or not. But I believe that there are a lot of actual real people behind these accounts, that it's not just bots.
Okay, all right. So, and you were asking about how it's hard to tell a second ago, though. But you can kind of tell, right? When you go back and look at that account and it's set up, it's not really personified. It's more of an image of a type of person or something, and they're only following certain people, and they don't have very many followers ever. And there is a way. I know when I was running Chelsea's account, I could certainly tell the trolls from the bots from the humans.
Sure. There are some that are obvious. If they are, like, tweeting out links to some website every 10 minutes, 24 hours a day. If they don't have many followers, or it's not necessarily, there could be people that don't have many followers as well. So it's sort of a combination of things you have to look at, and I've heard of experts that it's really hard for them to even tell sometimes, and sometimes you can automate an account occasionally, and then a real person hops on and is controlling it. So those I generally call them cyborgs, where you have. Part of the time it's a real person, and then other times they can automate their activity. So.
Wow, and it certainly is time consuming to look up the accounts too, and try to find out who's who.
Yeah.
You're oddly gratified when you think you know, and you never do know for sure either. We have a question from the audience.
Sure.
Hey, so I was wondering about these graphs you've created and how they could be used to kind of identify the most powerful nodes in the network. So you're talking about how influencers and celebrities, real or otherwise, kind of have this currency and are able to spread their influence throughout the graph.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you saw changes when someone like Alex Jones got booted off of Twitter, and how those networks and graphs change and the information flows, and if that kind of information could be used to understand, obviously all of these people are tweeting hateful propaganda and should probably be banned by Twitter. But if you can figure out okay, this is the person who everyone's listening to, maybe we can focus on them.
I think it's really hard because there are really just a lot of people on Twitter. So it's never usually just one single account. Alex Jones was a pretty dominant voice because he had, of course, his main account, the InfoWars account, the Prison Planet. There's a variety of accounts that are associated with that network.
Yeah.
But I think it's hard to just point to just one single account. It's because once they all sort of start tweeting together, that has an emergent effect. It has a network effect.
Cool.
And that's really what you would have to sort of take all of them offline, and I doubt that Twitter's going to do that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool that you have this data now, though. Like, because Twitter exposes that, you can see, okay, here's the pebbles that start the avalanche. Here's the like networks that build up, and I mean, hopefully, I'm sure they're using that kind of information to try and identify bot networks and things like that. But
yeah,
it's complicated.
Okay, great. Stand up, please. Thank you.
Yeah, so I also have a question about the graphs. So number one, how did you generate these graphs? And number two, what exactly do the graphs mean? So there's like a line. I see like a line going from one node to another, and there's lots of these lines. So would that be like a tweet, or what exactly does a line represent?
So I actually made a quick network before when I first got here today. And do I have time to do like a little demo of it? All right, because let me just put that down. Let's see here. So I'll just show you how it works. I've been collecting tweets for the Erin Swartz Day account for a couple of days, just because I was curious to see what it looked like. And all right, so let me open it up. Oh, shoot. File. Reset. Okay, hang on a second. All right, so you just basically, and this is just a basic 2-column spreadsheet with users and mentions from that's been tweeting the Erin Swartz Day account over the past. I didn't check the time frame, but I have something like 1,237 tweets, just over 1,000 tweets. It's got 657 nodes and 1,600 edges. So the nodes are accounts, and the edges are connections between them, like retweets and mentions. This can vary depending on what the data points are that you're using. So, and then we just run. Let's see if I can. I'm going to run some calculations. The modularity determines the community structure. So there are 21 communities in this graph right now. And eigenvector centrality calculates the distance between any two nodes in the network. So, and when I say distance, it means degrees of separation. So, if I retweet Lisa for that transaction, for that activity, I'm 1 degree of separation away from Lisa. Then I'm going to color it based on the community.
Gee, I'm so glad he asked that question.
I forgot that I did this when I got here this morning, so I can show you right now. Let me make something a little bit nicer here. So just make it nice and shoot. It's hard to do this on the spot. Hang on.
This is great. Thank you very much. It's so cool you did this, Erin.
Yeah, I just thought to do it before I came out here. So, all right. So, and it always looks like this big square when you pull it in. And again, this isn't a whole lot of tweets. So normally I work with, like much larger networks. I'm going to scale it based on the centrality calculations. And then this is going to, I'm going to run a force-directed algorithm. Usually I run 2 on a larger network, but for this one I'll just do 1 with force atlas 2. So this is going to, nodes that are closer to each other, it's going to attract them, and nodes that are further away will be repelled. So let me just... here, set the speed. And so it moves. You can put labels. And you can see that they sort of, it will move around until the system the network reaches a state of equilibrium, and then you can just sort of stop it when looks like it's about finished. I'm going to just change this to red so it doesn't look gross. Okay. And then this is sort of like a pre-render screen. And that's the activity. Let me actually, the blue is kind of hard.
That's about right,
to
with the
see.
Internet Archive and the EFF as my main.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I actually tweeted this earlier. I tagged you in it, Lisa. So does that answer your question? Yeah.
So this is really interesting. Just to give my take on this, it's really interesting to look at this and see.
Yeah, we can zoom.
So there's a big. There we go. That's great. That's great. So we got Project Seahorse, who's the new visual artist that I've been doing a lot of work with, that played our opening party Friday night and played last night. Trevor Tim, Freedom of the Press, D&A Lounge, and then XY Chelsea, Barrett Brown.
Here's
I got some looks like anonymous friends in there. Anonymous Press, Dr. Monique Mann, who works with ThoughtWorks Brisbane and Melbourne, who had a hackathons. Kitchen Sisters, there's actually an interview with me on NPR's Kitchen Sisters Friday morning that I haven't had a chance to tell anybody about. Wow, that's great. This is beautiful. Thank you. There's the Hacker Lab in Buenos Aires that had an Erin Swartz Day hackathon yesterday. All right. Well, this is very good. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. We have one more question before we let you go, okay? It's hard to let you go, but we have to.
I just wanted to say that I think that what you're doing is really great work, really important work. Must be quite difficult work, you know, because you're focusing on these areas that are so scary. I mean, really. And you're thinking about where's this going and what's going to come next. So I wanted to ask about, I mean, you mentioned solutions towards the end, and you said this is really difficult. We don't know where the solutions are going to come from. And I haven't done as deep investigation as you have, but I've thought about these issues too, and I've been looking for like, what's the way out of this? And so I know it's really difficult. And I think that what you're doing, by the way, actually is part of the solution. You know, it's like visualizing and making it clear to the rest of us what's actually going on here. But do you have any sense of green shoots of like trajectories that you think might be promising in the future to, you know, weave us out of this mess? Or are you don't have anything at this moment?
You know, there was, during the Women's March last year, some friends of mine in Mexico, Rosana Rio, and she leads the lab called Signal Lab. They do this similar social media analysis. They monitor that hashtag, and I translated their analysis. It's on my Medium blog. I think it's called Women's March, Networks of Digital Resistance. And that march, like, there were trolls in that hashtag, but they were so minimal, they were completely overpowered by like just the general public. So this is sort of why I feel like, you know, if there is a majority of people that have not been speaking up online, or like they just sort of, you know, retweet their favorite, you know, resistance accounts once in a while, they don't really engage, like I feel like maybe people don't realize that they even have to do this online. Like social media is not just for posting pictures of your supper, right? The alt-right is using these networks to bolster their street protests, to spread their messaging online, and they've been doing this now for a couple years. So I feel like maybe we're a little bit behind. I don't know though. I don't really have any
It was a
great
tough
ideas.
question. Yeah.
No, but I agree completely. And this is another thing about the right. You know, the right's better at staying on message. They know how to. They make up a lie that isn't even the truth. They make up the biggest ridiculous lie from hell, and they just keep saying it and saying it and saying it and tweeting it, and people in the press are believing them. Yeah. We argue about exact details of our truth sometimes instead of just picking something, maybe back a step that everybody can agree on, or, you know, we really need to got to get up on our game with the messaging.
And I think, honestly, journalists on Twitter are on the front line of this. Like, they really need, and they're getting better at it. I think that they need to recognize when there's this talking point going around and not amplify it, because...
And how do they not recognize it anyway? Because, or realize that they're promoting it. That's the part that I don't understand. And so, yeah.
I think, there's been a lot of, like, sort of the both sidesism, right?
So this is the problem, that they started making money from revenue doing this both sides of the issue bullshit,
right,
basically. And now, instead of reporting on things and finding out the truth so you could tell who was telling the truth and who was not saying something that was not evidence-based, they act like the other side is a fair other side.
Yeah. It's not equal.
It's not. And I'm all for, telling both sides. In fact, it's better if somebody does have something that's somewhat evidence-based to really tell both sides. But the press got lazy, and when they started making revenue, I didn't realize that CNN had been bought by someone, that really decided to change the entire format and kind of go for the money either. So do you notice anything in particular in terms of, like, when you see a new message? I keep thinking there's some newsletter or something that we could put together when the right-wing talking points come out, maybe, to help the press sort it out, because that's what I hear from the friends of mine that are in the press that are trying to do a good job, and they are there before I'm like complaining about everybody in the press. Of course, there's a lot of people trying to do a good job in the press. I still consider myself a member of the press. I write articles about things, and there's people trying, but they need help sorting through it, is what I'm hearing. That there's just a lot. It's hard to do. Everybody's coughing because we've had some major fires here in California.
There was an interesting podcast recently. Glenn Greenwald interviewed Manuela de Avila. She was vice president on the Workers' Party ticket in the recent elections. And they had a lot of problems with, WhatsApp in Brazil. They had, obviously lots of fake news, which, of course, is still sort of a loaded word. But he asked her about this. He said, what was going on? Because there's just a huge language barrier between us and Latin America. And she said that it wasn't just the fake news, but that it was, and I want to make sure that I quote correctly, paraphrasing, she said it was a highly organized network that moved with an unimaginable speed. And she also said that the opposition, the Bolsonaro campaign, was using what she called information technologies that may not have been declared by the campaign. Now, she didn't go into any details what those were, but I think it's really just the speed that they put their messaging out there. It needs to be matched, I guess.
Well, the other thing is that they're willing to do, like, fearful and subliminal shit and stuff too, and our side doesn't want to go there to try to get her. Once you're, like, giving somebody subliminal messaging, even if it's to tell them good things, if they don't know what's happening, then that's bad, right? So we're not going to cross that line. No. So they got us there.
Yeah, and that's the stuff. This is sort of a catch-22, because that kind of content, they're posting emotional marketing techniques on platforms that are engineered to spread, like, viral marketing campaigns. So it's sort of it's engineered for them. Yeah.
Did you notice anything particular, I just got to ask, about the latest caravan campaign? That's the way I guess it was definitely a campaign, which worked, is what I'm told.
Totally, yeah.
And did you notice anything on networks in particular about that comes to mind?
The thing that I kept seeing was a journalist, or he's a photojournalist from Mexico, and they took one of his photos that he took in, like, 2012, and started spreading that around and saying that the caravan, it was like a bloody police officer. It happened a completely different incident, right? It was, I think the federal police, I don't remember the exact incident right now. I think it was one of
it was 3 years ago. It was 5 years ago.
2012. And, and this journalist, I sent him the photo. I said, look what they're doing with your picture here. And he's like, oh, my God, And I think Donald Trump tweeted it or something, or I forget.
There's a Caravan commercial that had a guy with the bloody. The Caravan commercial was so bad, I thought it was parody when I first saw it. I didn't think it was a real commercial. I thought it was somebody making fun of another commercial that must have come out or something. And then it was like Donald, Donald Trump at the end. I'm like, wow. Okay, all right. Well, thank you so much. And you're available. You're on Twitter. You're on Twitter, obviously. And you're available to talk to other people. I'm hoping that other people might want to get into this field, because right now it's just Erin with all of her great data and techniques, and maybe if she had more people helping her do stuff, that we could really start finding out and start getting ahead of this. We need to be as fast as they are without being as sinister as they are. That's where we're at. All right, thank you, Erin.
Thanks. Thank you.
And next, we have Andrew McWilliams from the ThoughtWorks Artist Residency Program. And you'll remember him from yesterday when he was talking about climatechange.tech. And Aditya, are you going to help? Okay, great. Can you come so I can measure you for the mic real quick? You'd like to hand hold it? Oh, great. That's easy for me. Just one sec.
Testing. Oh. Hi. So yeah, I want to start today big picture, and I want to set the scene for the work that I'm going to talk about today. So technology is changing us in really profound ways, and it's changing society, as we've seen. And often this is in ways that are unintended or unexpected consequences, given the original intentions behind those who deployed it. And that can be in both good ways and in bad ways. I'm thinking about things like politics and elections, medicine and healthcare, social experiences and virtuality, robotics, AI systems making decisions for us. All of these things are changing right now. And these changes are complex and they're interwoven. And in technology, things don't stand still for long. So my question is, how can we look at what's coming next? And how can we understand what the technology means? And what are its implications for society? I'm an artist, and through my own artwork, looking at biometrics and human health and global warming, I've learned that art is a powerful way to explore the future and to look at what the trajectories of today can tell us about the trajectory of tomorrow. So that's why I created a unique research lab called ThoughtWorks Arts, which positions artists in collaboration with commercial software developers, designers, and technologists of different stripes. And this produces cutting-edge projects that reveal insights about the coming impacts of tech on society. So I'm going to kick off with an example so that you can see what I mean by this. This is Neil Harbison, and he's an artist. And he's also a human cyborg. He was born with a severe form of color blindness called achromatopsia. And that means that he can't see any color in society. That can be a problem. Things like subway maps or hot and cold taps or flags, they're all things that you need color perception to understand. And Neil says that color is actually a very social component of life. So as an artist, Neil decided to challenge that condition in a really unique way. And he created an antenna which feeds color information from the front of the antenna, from the video camera on the front of the antenna, and it converts it into audio tones which you can hear in his skull. And Neil argues that he's a cyborg, a true cyborg, because this is a permanent technology, biology synthesis. The antenna is a surgical implant in his skull. And he hears these colors via bone conduction 24/7, so the tones are always on and they can't be switched off. And this becomes an integrated part of his general psychological experience of the world every day. And it mixes in with other senses like sight and smell and so on. And what Neil says he has here is a new artificial sensory organ, not a replacement for an existing one, but an entirely new type of human-created sense. If you think about what that means, that conceptual shift, it's not a data point coming in that you're checking on your phone. It's a custom-designed, permanent, artificial sensory organ. There's profound social and industrial and ethical implications to that. And it sparked an international conversation about biohacking, technology, body modification, and so-called transhumanism. And Neil, as an artist, is at the forefront of that. So ThoughtWorks Arts worked with Neil to create another new sensory organ called the Time Sense. You see, ThoughtWorks is a global tech consultancy with 5,000 employees globally, and we have offices around the world. And so there's a lot of expertise in that company to be tapped. And so we launched ThoughtWorks Arts to incubate collaborations between those amazing commercial technologists and artists who are exploring these emerging technologies and their implications for society. The Time Sense that we developed is a prototype wearable headband that produces small pulses of heat around the circumference of his head, representing the 24-hour clock of the day. Neil's experimental question for this project was if he can train his perception of time to rely on the clock, can he control his general body clock? Can he smooth out jet lag? Can he take control of his circadian rhythm? In other words, what are the boundaries of technologically modified human experience? Can we become more than human or different than human? These are really important questions, and they're questions that artists can offer really unique, compelling answers to, and they can drive the technology forward as they go. Exploring these ideas means working with and supporting communities of artists working with all kinds of technologies, and we've worked on projects looking at virtual and augmented and mixed reality, brain-computer interfaces, volumetric imaging, holography, computer vision, robotics, AI, biometric surveillance, and a lot more. And I've been writing up articles explaining the power of these ideas of how we can cross-pollinate between academia, commercial tech, research institutes, and art practice. And these are ideas that we've been putting into practice at ThoughtWorks. Here's a sampling of some of our partners and the people in our network that we've been working with over the last few years, sometimes in small ways, and sometimes working directly with these partners hand in hand to incubate a new project. And here are the new initiatives that we designed as part of ThoughtWorks Arts that come out of our programming. And they're different programs that allow artists and designers and developers to find each other and to collaborate at different levels and in different ways. We've had thousands of people take part in our weekly hardware hack lab in New York. We've incubated hundreds of people in our summer and winter art hacks with some really astonishing projects that have come out of them. And we've incubated a smaller number of artists with really deep and sustained collaborations with our ThoughtWorks Arts residency. So let's look at some more projects that have been supported and incubated by these programs. The cyborg work that we did was part of an exploration into the future of human experience. And we took that another step further with this project that looks into the future of human identity. So I thought it would make a nice contrast to look at this one next. This is Heather Dewey Hagborg, and she collects discarded cigarette butts, chewing gum, and hair, and so on, and she extracts the DNA from this. She sequences it to draw out the traits, and then she 3D prints masks representing those traits. You can see some of the faces hanging here in a gallery setting, and this project started from a simple research question. How much can I tell about a person from a single human hair? Where can I take that, and what are the implications of that? You see, it's seductive to believe that we could produce accurate representations of people in this way, especially given that there are commercial companies selling DNA identification like this as a service to police forces. It's impacting real people's lives. But actually, as Heather has discovered from investigating the technology, genomic data can produce a variety of outcomes depending on how you code it. To illustrate that, all of the masks that you can see here, they're all produced by a single piece of DNA, which came from Chelsea Manning while she was in military prison before her release in 2017. So that gives you an idea of how wide the latitude of interpretation is. ThoughtWorks Heather chose to tell the story of her collaboration with Chelsea in a unique new way by collaborating with a ThoughtWorks visual designer in India who hand-inked these panels that you can see here. And by doing this, we helped Heather and Chelsea tell the story in a new way and to help increase public understanding of the tech and how it works. Again, with this work, the artist has initiated a public conversation. In this case, it's about DNA, identity, and data. Let's put that to one side for a moment and look at this other example. This is a project looking at a key area of emerging tech right now, which is emotion and AI. This is the artist and filmmaker Karen Palmer, and she's pointing to emotion values as determined by an AI system written by ThoughtWorks. A webcam is monitoring her facial expressions and classifying her emotions between fear, anger, and calm. We made this because Karen wanted it for an installation which positions you in a riot situation. You can see the installation here. It's actually kind of a tense experience. She has a riot cop usher you into the room. It's dark, there's smoke, there's trash everywhere. She really sets the scene. And the film progresses based on your facial expressions, and they're monitored. And the film branches in different directions depending on the perception of your facial expression. The outcomes of the movie are that you can end up hurt or in trouble, arrested, or set free, all based on the machine's perception of your emotion. ThoughtWorks developers collaborated with Karen on this project, and we created a new system called EmoPi to measure the emotional responses. All the code here is free and open source, and you can find it on GitHub. And this is a big part of why we think it's important. There's an industry building up around categorizing and recognizing emotions, and often it's inside a hidden black box and the public can't see it. So we publish the code along with write-ups and explain the methodologies and so show the accuracy scoring to help open a window into what this tech actually does. As before, Karen's work has initiated a public dialogue with tangible stories so that people from all kinds of backgrounds, whether you're technical, creative, business people, everyone has an entryway into this conversation. The last project I want to show you is one that we're currently working on, and this is based on the theme of movement in robotic perception. This is the artist Katie Kwan, and here she's working with an ABB IRB 6700 industrial robot, which is the type of robot used to manufacture cars on assembly lines. And she's working with this robot as part of her project at ThoughtWorks in collaboration with the Consortium for Research and Robotics in Brooklyn. Kate is an artist and a choreographer, and she's working to understand the gaps in communication flows between robots and humans. She's asking, what is not being said in HRI, in human-robot interaction? And can choreography help to define a new movement language between humans and robots? This is a really important question because robots are really set to become ubiquitous increasingly in the near future. So our developers helped Katie to create a visualization system to record her bodily movement and that of the robot arm. And we call the system Concat. Again, it's open source and you can find all of the code on GitHub. There's a lot of nuance in the way that robots move. For example, the ABB on the right here is defining, the way you program it is you define where the head should go. So you say the head should be oriented in this direction, it should be in this position. And then the arms movements are generated algorithmically based on the position that the head is supposed to be at. So the movements can really appear robotic, so to speak, as in unpredictable to human observers. And Kate is really trying to understand these types of ideas and to impact the field of human-robot interaction. So if you want to learn more and get more details on the artists or on these programs, you can look up our site, sign up to the newsletter, and browse the archive. Just search online for ThoughtWorks Arts and the ThoughtWorks Arts newsletter, and you should be able to find them. So I hope you can see from these examples about how artists engaging with technologists can produce really cutting-edge research projects on the future of tech and the impacts on society. And we're expanding. ThoughtWorks Arts is going to be running projects like these in San Francisco in 2019. And we're going to be looking to foster new collaborations to help artists working with technologists to open new windows onto the future. Thank you. I can take any questions. Over to Blues, Lisa.
You'd mentioned you'd be looking for people in 2019. Is there a way for people, that if they're interested, to find out information about participating?
Yeah, that's kind of why I mentioned the newsletter, because we always announce collaboration opportunities on that newsletter. Yeah. So if you search for ThoughtWorks Arts newsletter, click the sign up link, you'll definitely be kept informed, and you can also browse the archive and look at previous open calls for collaboration that are in the archive, and that will give you a sense of what you might be able to expect.
First of all, I'm really excited about the work that you're doing. A couple of years ago, I was at Arizona State working in the School of Arts, Media, and Engineering, and it was kind of the theme of the whole graduate program was technology to improve the human condition. And so we would partner with 17 different departments to kind of solve problems around social media or education or health. And so I'm curious, in your partnerships, you work with universities and colleges to secure grant money, or what kind of some of your funding models, or how you go out and collaborate as well as with communities?
Yeah, the way we've done it up until now is that ThoughtWorks is a commercial company, so the majority of the funding has come from ThoughtWorks for ThoughtWorks Arts programming, and that kind of makes sense. But we've done joint explorations with, for example, NYU, Tandon School of Engineering, Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, and usually what that means is resource sharing, collaboration, that type of thing. So I think I haven't been, when I say collaborations between these different partners, I'm talking more about combining forces and going on a journey together. We haven't taken that into funding requests yet, although that is something that we might like to do, because that opens new doors and expands the size of what you can do. So we're open to the idea, yeah. I think there was another question at the back, or no?
Does anybody else have any questions? Well, I have one question. So you, in one part of your presentation, you talk about developing a technology that, the one where you put the thing around your head and it uses temperature, and it links that with time or something, right? And it helps you control your circadian rhythm. I was just wondering, what would be the purpose of doing that?
Yeah, so the Cyborg Foundation, Neil is one of the co-founders of the Cyborg Foundation, and there's really a community of transhumanists, a global community at this point, experimenting with the boundaries of what it means to be human. And so you can, usually with the types of things that they're doing, if you ask really direct questions like, what's the immediate value that I can get tomorrow from having done that, usually the answers feel a little thin on the ground. But then when you take a look at the big picture of what all of them are doing at once, you start to realize that what we're seeing is the beginning of something much larger. Bodily augmentation is something that's going to get cheaper, easier, and more common. You can actually buy kits online right now, like an injectable, and inject an RFID tag under your skin. like, there's not really a great reason to do it at the moment, but thousands of people are doing it, right?
Only lots of reasons not to do it.
Yeah, right, exactly. But the point is that often with emerging tech and like when we're sort of peering into the future, things look strange until they don't. And so these artists, and I think this is one of the reasons artists are really well positioned to explore these things, they're asking the questions about where are things headed. So sometimes they'll posit ideas like the ones that Neil's posited about what would it mean if I could control my circadian rhythm? What would be the, where could I take that? And he's talked about, he takes it into much grander territory about like how that's going to impact his life. But I don't know if I can really speak to that because from his point of view, he's already modified himself and his experience of the world is already something that I can't fully understand because you have to wear these sensors 24/7 for over a year, according to Neil and these cyborgs, before the psychological effect really takes root and your body adapts. So that, for example, if you then switch the sense off, it's a bit like that feeling of like losing a limb or something like that, So the answers are kind of grander, and I think the real answers are going to emerge over the next 10, 20, 30 years. But with the time sense, it's I think it's the concrete answers would be things like the things I mentioned, jet lag and the ability to, like, I don't know about you, but I struggle with sleeping patterns sometimes. Imagine if that was something that was under push button control. It's a bit of a switch in your mind as to what that really means, but there is actually a lot of value there. And you can imagine a future in which these types of augmentations, there becomes like a social pressure to conform towards them because, you want your kids to do well at school and these kids have got the time sense or something like that, So these, that's a little further out, but these are the types of things that the questions the artists are asking point towards. I hope that helps. There's a couple at the back. I don't know if you want to.
80? This is John Gonzalez from the Internet Archive. So his question has such importance and meaning. All right, here's John. Stand up.
Stand up. Okay. All right. So a lot of the discussion here is really about the artistic delivery of things, of humans moving towards mechanical and artificial creations. Is there any work that is also in the scope of thought work about the artificial computational AI creating art in the direction of humanness, or is it only one directional?
Actually, yeah, that's a valid observation of the work we've done. So my collaborator in this program has been working with people at Columbia University in New York. There's a project called Frankenstein AI. Are you familiar with that? No. Okay. But you can kind of guess from the, it's about creating artificial humanity out of AIs and also giving them like bodily form. So there's a robotics component, etc. So we're leaning into it with that project, but that's like a multi-year project, and I'm not sure where. But that's a good question, actually. Yeah, a lot of the stuff that we've been doing is in the other direction. Yeah.
Okay, we have another question.
Hi, I was curious if you could say more about the Choose Your Own Adventure style movie that you were talking about. I was curious as to how the decisions were made, the different restrictions on the guiding forces. So are we dealing with like, oh, happy takes more happy? Like if there's smiles, give more happy sorts of experiences, or if there were separate data on ones where the AI was giving the humans watching a more negative experience or a more positive one, how those sorts of things were lined up. If you'd say more to that, thanks.
Yeah, it's a non-linear film, but there are some decision points during the film, and at that moment, your emotional state averaged over the recent period just before the decision point are taken, and that's used to trigger your movement into the next component. Because this was all done with actual filmed footage. The artist didn't want to put people in a virtual environment because she didn't want to work with the headgear, and she wanted to see if there was a new type of realism, and she came from a filmmaking background, and she thought there was a theatrical approach to tapping into people's emotions. So so the way it works is that you reach a decision point, your calmness, anger, and fear are assessed, and whichever of those is dominant over the other emotions, as in which one is higher, will lead you to the next path. Now, there's lots of different ways of trying to achieve that type of an end, and what ThoughtWorks was, I think, prototype 2, and there are like third and there's other iterations that you can move onwards from there. But a lot of what we do is we work with artists to initiate or to move one step further with early stage ideas like that. So there's like a lot of different places you could take it from there.
Hold on, sorry.
So just one follow-up. So when you get to the fear versus calmness versus anger, I think was the third one you said, is there a preference? So do you want to steer away from calmness in this film? Were there any sorts of thought on that?
Oh, yeah. So Karen's wants to help people to learn to train to be calm, if you know what I mean. She's got a perspective on the world, and she thinks it's important for people to be able to move through fear. So to experience fearful situations and to navigate them without losing it, basically. And she's a parkour person, and she actually gives trainings on parkour, and for her, the film installation is an extension of that. So yeah, the preference would be calm, but algorithmically we don't sort people and try and make them calm. It's just, she thinks that the experience overall can help people to learn to remain calm.
Great. We have a question right here.
Okay. So Lev Manovich and his soft cinema attempted to address the idea of database cinema back in 2000, 2001. More recently, writers like Slavoj Žižek and Graham Harman have talked about object-oriented ontology, the idea of the classification of all things, coming back with, Internet of Things and so on, but also just this notion of a new classification, a logic. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. My question is there a framework emerging that is possibly post New Age? I'm trying to hopefully help the Europeans get away from the California ideology of a New Age interpretation of, the transhumanism stuff is not very helpful if you're actually trying to build a new society. It's kind of a distraction. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm not sure how to address most of the question, but the idea of transhumanism and helpfulness to society, I think my response would be, as we've seen in the previous talk, there are trends that are going to occur and that will happen in terms of the relationship between tech and society over time. And these are really difficult to understand and control. So I think we need to be prepared for them. So if we take things like what Neil is doing, I think that the reason it's important is because it helps us to imagine a future. And then, in the black and white version of my answer, it's like, rather than waiting for the changes to occur and then think, oh, how do we plug this gap here? You can already have thought about those problems and, potentially have better solutions at hand. Because you've had a broader public dialogue and you've brought more segments of society into the conversation prior to the change. I'm not sure. I hope I answered your question. Yeah.
I love that a commercial company is going and doing these art projects and being so public about it, which is fantastic, and they're very provocative. But I was wondering if you close the loop and how well did they do? For instance, the Emoto Pi, does it read your emotions very well? Have you tried it? The circadian rhythm thing, did it work? And the DNA mask thing, did they try going and finding out, does it actually predict pretty well what people look like? Or is it just kind of Chelsea Manning can look like any of a very large number of people? Did you close the loop on any of the projects?
Yeah, that's often a question that gets asked about a lot of these projects. You know, if I say, oh, there's this DNA and we can produce this face mask, one of the first questions a lot of people will ask is, well, how accurate is it? And that's a very good and valid question. But I think that the reason we're doing this is different from that. And this is where we, you know, you're right to point out that as a commercial company, ThoughtWorks is very interested in, like, it's zeroing in on accuracy and the ability to produce better algorithms and so on. But as ThoughtWorks Arts, the questions we're asking are, what are the trajectories and how are they going to impact society? So what we want to see is tech that does something new, and it may well be something that, you know, given a resource team of 20 developers in an academic institution or a research institute or whatever, can become, you know, or is likely to become much more robust and much more capable. For us, we just want to see that the tech that the artists are working with is valid and that it has a reasonable impact on society that we think is worth exploring. So when you say close the loop, I don't think that's the way in which we close the loop. I think the way in which we close the loop is to try to bring it to public awareness and initiate public conversation, because the artists actually, depending on where they're taking it, some of them are actually taking it going much deeper and trying to close the loop themselves, and then we'll part ways, and that's the journey they're going to go on. Others are going to leave it there, but that's the point of what we're interested in, is increasing awareness, building a broader audience. Yeah.
Right, and Brewster. Whoa. Okay. Sound guy. And Brewster. I was the one who worked with Chelsea and Heather on that DNA project, and the whole point, there's no loop to close there. She wasn't trying to be accurate. The point is you can't be accurate making a 3D representation just from someone's DNA. There's actually 40 or more different variants of what that face was going to look like, and that's why the exhibit in Soho last year was probably Chelsea, joking around, because the two that are touring the world, everyone thinks of them as the way that it looks from the DNA, and it was actually kind of the opposite of Heather's point. All right, just to make that clear about that exhibit.
That's a good point, because it's actually often, it's just as much about exposing the problems with the tech, because what's happening is technology like that is being deployed commercially and is being used in society. So the conversation isn't just this is coming, the conversation is also this is in some ways already here and you can't rely on it the way that people think you can. Heather makes a really great point about how people tend to believe algorithms and the outputs of algorithms because they were produced by algorithms. And they don't tend to, exactly, yeah. They don't tend to see it that way. I mean, you know, these types of questions that we're asking, you know, how can we broaden access to those? So, yeah.
Yeah. Great, thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Let's all hear it for Andrew McWilliams. DJ. Yes, and Heather, before she did the project with Chelsea, her whole point was all of the random DNA that we just leave around. So you finish a cigarette and stomp it out on your shoe, well, that's got your DNA all over it, or a coffee cup or something, which everybody kind of knows after that Black Mirror episode, probably the USS Callister episode that won an Emmy. But that was the point. But when she was doing it in 2014, 2013, everybody didn't know it. And now a lot of people know it because of Heather Dewey Hagberg's work. So it was an honor for me to be able to work with her just as a liaison because Chelsea was stuck in prison and couldn't do it herself. And then for me, when Chelsea got out and there was a New York exhibit, it was quite amazing to see that, the Probably Chelsea exhibit. And you can see that, that's actually at the on the Fridman Gallery website if you want to see more about that exhibit. All right, our next speaker is Mike Bloomberg, who is a neurohacker at Noisebridge. Doesn't that sound cool? It sounds so cool. And Noisebridge, again, has been a big part of this year's Swartz Day. It was why I was able to learn so much to make the speakers so cool. They're helping me make the Swartz Manning Museum and Art Gallery that's in virtual reality, floor of which is on the VR gaming station if you want to take a look at it. And Micah's specialty, or one of them, I should probably say, is that he's really tracks all of the equipment and all of the software, sort of like you were talking about, Brewster, like what of this stuff like really does stuff? What makes flashing colors and looks cool because you attach it to your head, and is what's really doing something with the brainwaves, right? Those are the kinds of questions I was asking when I first started going to their computer interface. What's the proper name of that group on Wednesday nights?
Wednesday is the Dream Team of Neurohackers, and Friday is the Neurotech SFR.
Okay, so Wednesday nights and Friday nights, it is hopping at Noisebridge, and you can come anytime, 8 o'clock. And these guys are just doing these amazing things, and then they're getting their software and running it off of the latest version runs off of Pi, and is very cool. It's a combination of everything else that's going on that's cool and kind of in one place, and then attached to a computer interface. It's very interesting. So I got Mikey to give a talk, so everybody could kind of, because he's very good at summarizing it down, and then I will have questions afterwards, because I know I'll have questions, and it's just really, really nice clarification kind of guy. So without any further ado, I'm going to adjust his mic, and we're going to hear Mike Bloomberg.
Stand again. It's great. Okay.
So you got to talk right.
Okay. Hello. Hi. This is Micah Bloomberg, self-titled journalist, researcher, neurohacker. I titled my talk "The Brain-Computer Interface 2018, 2019, and Beyond." This talk probably should have been called the non-invasive brain-machine interface, because I'm not really going to dive into the invasive stuff. We have, I guess, about half an hour. Is that right? About half an hour? You may talk for 30 minutes? Or?
Yeah, don't worry. Do
Okay.
do you have longer than that? It's about half an hour, and then we'll have questions, so it's going to be longer than that. We actually have a speaker that... oh. Okay, anyway, yeah, half an hour, great. Thanks.
Okay. So so right here on this slide, you can see this is the Brain Duino EG board that the Dream Team of neurohackers has. It's been their sort of like their passion, and they brought this device. And when I saw this in April, I said, "Hey, could we use this on Friday with the Neurotech event, Neurotech SF or SFVR?" And they said yes. So the two groups have been collaborating ever since. I would say Neurotech's focus has been more on the web VR side, and definitely we appreciate all the collaboration, and it's been really great and really successful. So WebXR in this slide you can see involves basically JavaScript and HTML, 3JS, and you can combine it with a VR headset. This is a standalone Oculus Go. So we were able to successfully, the combined efforts of both groups, to successfully bring the EEG signals into WebVR and then get them running in the Oculus Go. It involved several iterations of a server. Initially, we tried the Friday group initially tried to send. I think the first we tried to fetch the data through JavaScript, but I found out that was just going to be static, and we need more of a stream. So we said we need a WebSocket, and then Kevin built a WebSocket server in Python, and then later he built one in Go, and it works really good. We may need something a little bit fancier than a WebSocket. So basically, I think every neurohacker well, not every neurohack. I mean, some people don't care about VR or AR, but I mean, so I just wanted to sort of like subtitle the project. I mean, referencing a project that involves VR and BCI and artificial intelligence. I sort of refer to it as a neurohacker project. So, and this is a picture of this photo. It looks like there's a little like a dragon's head. Like the top of the red line on the left side is the ear of the dragon, and the nose of the dragon is the top of the red line on the far left. The peak wave on the on the left, the highest point on the left, is the dragon's ear, and then the rest is like it's a wingless dragon. Anyway, I thought it was really cool. So the question is, have you ever had a dream where you were someone else, playing the role of another person, and when you're in that dream, you accept that you are this other person, only to, when you wake up, realize that this other person is not you, and this other person was motivated to do things you wouldn't do? Different scenario. This slide says basically the neurotech. So what happened was I wanted to create a neurotech guild towards the end of 2017, and the previous organizer of Neurotech SF, who'd been organizing Neurotech SF for 3 years, she wanted to hand off the reins to someone else. She said, okay, well, instead of starting a new guild, why don't you take over Neurotech SF? And so I said yes, and then so the goal became, and I've also been an organizer of San Francisco virtual reality events before that, and we had several successful events, big events. And so the goal was, I said, okay, our goal now as the organizer of this group is to combine BCI with VR and AI and AR to create next generation biofeedback experiences. This is the logo for the Neurotech SF. As you can see, I didn't create this logo, but other people have been trying to combine EEG and VR for a long time. Does the self exist? When asked this question, the Buddha was quiet. In the Matrix, Neo referred to himself as no one. Who is the observer of the content of the mind? Does choice exist? So this is where my thinking was between 2003 and 2005. Definitely asking a lot of these questions. 2004, I was 24, and I remember reading about Isla Prigogine's explanation for how life is a dissipative structure. The idea is that everything in the universe is a fractal of dissipative systems. Everything is a vortex. A human being would be a vortex because we need to consume energy in order to maintain our equilibrium and then dissipate increasing entropy to the surrounding environment. A hurricane does this, a galaxy does this, a galaxy is a spiral, a hurricane is a spiral. An atom looks like a spiral. An atom might be a dissipative system as well. So maybe the conscious experience is also a dissipative system. I remember reading On Intelligence by Jeff Hawkins. I felt his book changed my life in part because it offered a connection between neuroscience and computational neuroscience. And so that became my focus, neuroscience, computational biology, and machine learning. And Jeff Hawkins, I really appreciate his work in that he attempts to describe a global working theory of the mind, hierarchical temporal memory prediction structure, something that was clear enough to understand where memories could become predictions, memories stored in a grid of cells, and we could replicate this in a machine. And this machine could represent all sensory data. And so that was a unique and sort of world-changing thought, that all of our thoughts, dreams, feelings, all of our senses, everything we see, hear, touch, smell, all of our abstract concepts can be representative as tempospatial patterns in a grid of cells. It's like saying that my feelings have a topology and a frequency, and so do my thoughts, and so do my constructions of the world around me. And this idea of an information-based soul, or what I call a self-aware network, began to emerge in my mind from books like by folks like Douglas Hofstadler and Nicholas Humphreys and Olaf Swartz and Peter C. So Neurable is a company that is an example, one of many, that is combining VR headsets with brain-computer interfaces, EEG sensors in particular, EMG sensors. So they're trying to capture brainwaves, and also some of these companies are trying to capture. Let me go back. Your heart rate and one of the new ideas is capturing your muscles on your face, so you can predict the facial expressions. So some of the thought leaders have been following in machine learning that you should check out: Yan LeCun, Jeff Hinton, Yoshua Benju, Andrew Ng. These folks are responsible for the revolution in AI since 2012. And also I would recommend join the group Self-Aware Networks on Facebook. I founded in 2012 if you're really interested in next generation brain-computer interfaces, and also the group Neurophysics Plus. This is a VR headset that combines EEG and eye tracking. The idea is you can, with these sensors, you can predict emotion and intention at the user interface. You can also create some really advanced, there's so much advanced stuff that's coming out of this in terms of like you could really tell if somebody's lying. This is like a future lie detector. It's kind of scary how hard it is to fool this machine. In 2012, a bit of history, I moved to Southern California, from Southern California to San Francisco to start a neurofeedback salon. So the idea was, and I don't mean like a discussion room, I mean like, I was thinking like a hair salon. The idea was with an audiovisual machine, a mode of EEG, and a mind workstation software, I was attempting to optimize the human mind. I would create custom light and sound tracks that incorporated encoded isochronic brainwave entrainment beats. But you would see and hear these with LED glasses and headphones, and it would create mind-altering experiences. So MTech is a company that is creating an EMG muscle tracking faceplate to predict facial expressions in VR. So EMG is for sensors that focus on your muscle movement. That's another example of brain-computer interfaces converging with VR. So going back to the emotive headset that I combined, is EEG combined with LED glasses. I called it the New Mind Cycle, and I experimented this with psychedelic medication, and I had this experience which I interpreted as the beginning of time. It began with imagining the universe as a film. You could see 2 frames at the same time. There would be twice as much as everything, and if you have 2 frames, and so I imagined twice as much as everything. Then I imagined 4 times as much as everything, then 8, 16, 32, and pretty soon I was seeing 128,000 duplications of everything, different frames of time, and doubling in reality. And so at some point, I was wearing this emotive headset, my brainwaves and whatever else it was picking up, all the noise was going into the computer. It was altering latent sound effects that I was seeing and hearing with LED glasses. And every time I felt that every time that there were these intervals happening of my brain being altered by the incoming signals, which further altered the light and sound patterns I was seeing and hearing. And so this cycle was occurring, and in reality kept doubling in my vision. And I kept, until it's no longer this lumpy mess, it became this like smooth, creamy, light colored, and then totally dark. And then I saw flashes, I heard bangs, and the flashes contained images of people, places, and things across all of time, which I interpreted as I was observing the ever-present now moment of space from its apex as a fractal from the beginning of time, where all of time was an information fractal. So so there are a number of open source brain-computer interface projects. OpenBCI is the big one. We could combine this with the HTC Vive or other VR headsets with 3D. If we can get 3D models of these headsets, or just create 3D printed parts, we could add existing BCI sensors to VR headsets. All kinds of BCI. Right now, we've been experimenting with EEG. Soon, I'm gonna be trying to acquire some eye tracking. But in recent years, we've seen as you've seen through the slide deck, many AR/VR headsets coming to the market with built-in biosensors. Let's go. This is a company in San Diego, and there's so many companies I didn't get to include in this deck, but they said that they had a sensor that was an EEG sensor with 1 billion times improvement in signal detection and noise cancellation. So they improved the signal quality, and they said it was by a factor of 1 billion. So, and I'm actually representing their company. I'm an advisor. So there's this next generation, but there's also a bunch of like really cool neuroscientists on there and advising them. So that's a really cool group of people in San Diego. Mary Lou Jepson, I saw her talk at the Long Now. She has this, her company is called Open Water. It's a functional near-infrared cap that functional near-infrared spectroscopy that uses ultrasound and infrared light to create brain imaging. And Mary Lou Jepson actually says that her brain imaging is 1 billion times, exactly 1 billion times improvement in resolution over MRI. It's very spatial. I'm very excited about electrical impedance tomography. OpenEIT is a project started by Jean Rintel. I did a podcast, the Neuralace podcast with her. That has incredible capabilities as well to exceed MRI imaging and also be really cheap. And then there's Fluoroxa microwave imaging by Joel Lebov. You just have to look up Fluoroxa. All of these technologies could be combined together. All of them promise to be harmless in terms of how much, less harmful than, we are, for example, bombarded by infrared light every day all the time. So, as Mary Lou Jepson says, so it's the amount of impact that these devices have is sort of less than the impact we're already receiving in our environment naturally or unnaturally. And with deep learning software, we can predict. We can focus on studying all of these brain imaging. We can focus on studying a semantic segmentation or we can object segmentation on the 3D volumes of medical data, and then correlate that to what people are seeing in the real world. It could be a movie, it could be a volumetric VR experience, which is a project that I'm actually working on. It's where I want to go, but I'll tell more about that later. Possibilities of other technologies being combined. There's some privacy cryptography stuff on the blockchain, including homomorphic encryption on the blockchain, so that you can send your data into the cloud. It's encrypted. It's never decrypted, but you can run computational processes on it and then return something to the user that maybe predicts their intention or emotion or visualizes themselves, creates a mirror-like reflection that sends something back to you that is meaningful to you. Here's a photo from Jean Rentel's slide deck, her OpenEIT project. All the new technologies that I'm really excited about are versions of tomography, something I learned from Jean. The functional near-infrared spectroscopy. You're sending, you're emitting something and you're collecting it, and you're decoding it. With the infrared light from open water, you're creating this like scatter of light, and if you reverse the scattering of light, that's holography, but that's still a type of tomography. VR and AR devices today may be considered a new type of brain-computer interface. They have head and hand position tracking, they have orientation tracking, and many of these headsets have microphones and motion controllers. As you saw, as you've seen, some of these are going to be including eye tracking. Especially, the eye tracking is coming because people want to do foveated rendering. And the other sensors are coming because people want to develop better brain interfaces, and people want their essence in VR. People want to meditate in VR. So we have all this powerful technology coming at us, and it has medical value too. VR can definitely It's been shown in early clinical trials to relieve pain and relieve suffering for a variety of mental illnesses. And that research continues to expand. So the thought crosses my mind that sending data back into the brain, we can develop neural lace, but after we figure out how to decode the brain, after we figure out how to communicate directly with electromagnetic signaling through wireless, it could be that sending the information back into the brain through the eyes could be the fastest route, just because we've sort of evolved that pathway. I don't know, but Muse is a company that they've combined a faceplate for the HC Vive, another example of EEG converging, EEG and ECG converging with VR. So because I wanted to experience EEG and VR after doing the Mind Cycle company, I started a Facebook group called Virtual Reality, and that got big. That's 19,000 members. Another group called Steam VR that has 23,000 members. And then I set out to be a journalist in 2016 to cover science and technology stories that I know about all the cutting edge new technologies and the people behind this tech. So between 2015 and the present, I became a journalist researcher. I wanted to build the next generation Mind Cycle that combined VR with PCI and EEG. So I could have a front row seat to the future. And Neurohaxer combines tech with novel ways. Sorry, this is more about the Neurohaxer project. It's about creating new kinds of biofeedback data visualization with artificial intelligence, creating new kinds of nerve correlation for biomedical research. We want to build actually useful medical tools, new interfaces to predict user choices and emotion, user likes and dislikes, new social, multi-user social experiences. So imagine in the summer of 2019, you're in the metaverse with your Oculus Quest, and you have these clip-on brain-computer interface sensors, and you're in this infinitely detailed, because of this new entity component system, this infinitely detailed metaverse, and maybe you're decorating a room, because that may be the job in the future, is just creating virtual reality rooms and stuff, creating art in VR, and then the computer realizes by studying your biometrics and your user data patterns that what you want to build, it gets an idea and sort of offers helpful suggestions. As a journalist, I was surprised to see some of the trend of, in the past 3 years, this trend of technologies converging. There are so many companies that haven't been able to include in this pitch deck, in this deck, presentation deck, that we've had companies combining AR and VR with all manner of body tracking, hand tracking, eye tracking, brain and face and muscle tracking. But we've also had companies combining these technologies with AI and blockchain and homomorphic encryption. And there's also been self-driving cars in the past 3 years that have been combining LiDAR and cameras with AI. And recently, there was a project that combines the self-driving car with VR. So now you have VR and LiDAR or AI. And so the idea is, my mind is let's use a self-driving car, that type of computer, that type of technology, those types of sensors, to create a semantic segmentation of the environment and correlate that to our 3D volumes of medical data. And I think, these car companies are using, two-dimensional convolutional neural networks, but there's an opportunity to use other types of neural networks. I won't go into that, but so over the years I've been doing a podcast. You can find out a lot of the ideas that I've encountered over the years, that I've been able to share and talk to some really great folks. And then I became an organizer, of course, of San Francisco Virtual Reality. Most of the people who come to the Neurotech meetup are actually coming from the San Francisco Virtual Reality meetup, so that there's no way for me to let go of the VR side of things. I guess I'm sort of grateful for that, because most people are coming for the VR stuff. And so that's my business card. Let me keep going. So yeah, I've already covered this. Neurohaxer's overarching objective. Now we're combining WebVR. Now we're I'm still attached to the idea of 3D point cloud neural networks. Can't really say much about that, but so our project exists in part, the NeuroHaxer project exists in part because I know that we know that these AR/VR devices are coming to the market with built-in biosensors. And we want to be creating software ahead of that. So this is the NeuroHaxer group, 9,300 members, and the Software Networks group. Both are on Facebook. Let's see, the next generation B-side device will probably be an AR headset or a VR headset. I'll tell you the reason in a second. So a neural network can be made to represent anything. There's any modality, any voice. This is a reference to the 3D volumetric neural network. The neural network is this point cloud, and it can be trained to recognize anything, to emulate anything, and predict what it's emulating. So that's the idea. If you think of yourself as your neurons constituting a sort of 3D point cloud, and their activity is able to basically represent anything, basic 3D signal processing. So any image you give to your eyes or ears, it can replicate it at 3D and then learn from it, and then build a 3D model of it and store a memory of it. So if you encounter something similar again, you'll predict what you saw previously. And if that happens too fast, if someone is hallucinating, then they'll see patterns that are not there because your brain is overclocked and it's trying too hard to match the patterns in memory with the incoming patterns. And so you get these illusions. VR and AR devices can already be considered a brain-computer interface. I kind of covered that. Main machine learning includes, so this is a dive into what we could do. I'm just going to try to skip that. I recommend these stories that I've written. If you want to, there's a story I wrote about humans are metal robots in a valid sense. And I really recommend you check that out at vrma.io. And another article called 3D Crosshair Convolutional Neural Networks, which is about how we can, dive into this data and decode the brain. When I say humans are metal robots in a valid sense, I mean that our cells are filled with metals on the periodic table. Calcium is a metal, potassium is a metal, sodium, and you can check the periodic table for yourself. These are metals, and our cells are filled with them, and they help us to conduct electricity. They help us to generate electromagnetic waves that may be signals, information patterns. And so this is, so if someone says we're a meat robot, say, no, actually we're a metal robot that evolved through evolution. And these stories will help bolster my claims. There's lots of research cited in them. So I got the chance to talk to Nerble and interact on. These are two companies that I showed in previous slides that are combining EEG and heart rate with and deep learning with AR and VR. And so what I learned from them is that VR is growing much faster in the hospital, in the medical realm, than EEG. And that is the reason that I mentioned earlier, was the reason that, that all these biometric sensors will converge with AR and VR. It's because VR is selling, and it's selling much faster than EEG is selling. And so that's why the convergence will happen. This is Microdose VR. They make really psychedelic graphics. They combine it with, you can wear the Muse, the Interaxon Muse sensors, EEG and ECG, so that your biometric data will alter the graphics. And I'm a brand ambassador for Microdose VR, which also features art by the artist Android Jones. So with technologies like open water and then electrical impedance tomography, we can begin to attempt next level experiments to decode the brain, to read and write to the brain, like it was a special kind of hard drive, to send AR and VR to the brain, like Sword Art Online, like The Matrix. We will accomplish neural lace and nerve gear. And and then eventually that will lead to other technologies like artificial cortex and artificial brains. But the thing is, there's no way that this Black Mirror-like future isn't going to happen because, as Mary Lou Jepsen points out, people really need these technologies. We need brain imaging that has a billion times improvement in resolution so that we can help billions of people around the world, so we can find cancer cells in someone's brain, so we can help surgeons do brain surgery. So there is no way to stop this from coming because we need these medical technologies. But with these technologies comes the ability to read and write to the human brain. It's a double-edged sword, unfortunately. Tools can become weapons, but we need these tools. So by the end of July 2018, we were finally able to connect brain Arduino EE signals with WebXR. We produced a video that shows actual voltages from sensors causing shapes in our A-frame-based web code to run. It took a lot of work over many meetups to figure it out, and a lot of people contributed. Thanks to everyone. I couldn't have done it by myself, so I appreciate the community of neurohackers. There's a lot of neurohackers in San Francisco and the world around us. Here's some links you can find to join our groups. And then I wanted to show you the demo real quick. I don't know how much time I have left, but. Okay, so I'm just going to play this video. Now what this is these are our EEG signals. Separated on the bottom of this video. Let me see if I can maximize
Let
it.
people know that this is the same thing that you guys are demoing
today,
right? So you can actually use this today if you want in the VR fair. Are you guys still outside?
I don't know. I don't know where it is.
Oh, okay, sorry. But we're moving things inside is what I'm asking. But so it's basically like a sweatband with sensors in it that you wear on your head. And then they have to amplify the signals because your brain waves are actually very light signals. And then it looks like what he's about to say. Okay, go.
Okay, yeah, so yeah, you wear a headband. You said it perfectly, actually. I don't know what I could add to it, but you wear a headband, amplifies your signals. We're bringing them via the server that Kevin wrote from the dream team of neurohackers. We're bringing them into WebVR. We are modifying. What we have in this image is there's 1,000 spheres, 10 rows. The first 10 signals are being modified. They're labeled left gamma, left beta, left alpha, left theta, left delta, and then right delta, right theta, right beta, right, I don't know, it's the same signals left and right. So we have 10 signals and they're being propagated backwards. And this is the video of that. It's running in WebVR. It also runs in the Oculus Go. It runs in any VR headset because it's WebVR. And it's very fast. People think that WebVR will introduce some delay, but it's completely usable. So these are brainwaves in a 3D WebVR application. It involves 3JS. It involves JavaScript. It involves A-Frame by Mozilla. And so this headset unfortunately doesn't have 6-off tracking, but you could, if we had a headset with 6-off tracking, you could walk inside your brainwaves. Or actually, I should say, this is a reflection of your brainwaves, imperfect, filtered many times over, not an actual exact representation of your brainwaves, but it is a reflection. And it's really interesting how we're only modifying the first row, but these amazing sort of wave patterns come out of it. And so we're showing that today on the demo floor. That's about it for my talk.
Great. Anybody have questions about all the stuff that that he's been talking about? I can have just a couple clarifications. I think it was my fault for giving the Reader's Digest condensed version about the video like I did like that. But could you say a little bit more when you say that the different brainwaves, actually what brainwaves you're measuring and how it corresponds
So
to what's represented
as-
on the screen?
You can see almost, it's kind of blurry, but it says at the bottom L gamma, L beta. So basically, EEG is a frequency range, usually between 0 hertz and, I don't know, maybe up to 200 hertz. Electrodes, we're not going to read up to 200 hertz. But so what we do is we use the fast Fourier transform to divide the EEG frequency range into several different categories. So the 0 to 4 hertz is usually delta. Theta could be something like 4 to 8 hertz or 4 to 7.75 hertz. The alpha frequency, some people will just skip between what's between 7 and go straight to 10 hertz, between 10 hertz and I don't know what it is off the top of my head. But anyway, you go through another segment that's alpha, and it's different. Like if you read different neuroscience texts over the past, 100 years of neuroscience, different neuroscientists have divided that spectrum in different ways. Beta has a different frequency range. Gamma is the highest frequency range. There's a lot of disputes over what gamma is. Some people think it's related to vision. Some people think it's related to, I don't know, I'm not going to go into that. But basically, we're talking about a certain frequency of electromagnetic noise. There's a question in the back. Is there a microphone that can go back there? There's a certain frequency range of noise that we're, not noise, but electromagnetic sensor activity that we're using to represent your brain. Go ahead.
The quantified self concept has tended largely to be associated with a kind of neoliberal notion of self-improvement, self-perfection, this sort of mythologized idea of the individual as a sovereign Cartesian unit cut off from their data, except for the data that they consider privileged to them as a, specialized subject. So, I only want my data about my blood condition, my this, my that, as if that data can be in some way separated out from all the other data swimming around the internet. Could you talk a little more about subjectivity in relation to this data and how incumbent it may be upon us as subjects to interpret our relationship to the data, given that currently much of this data is centralized by those with a vested interest in maintaining control?
Well, okay. So the trend that I see going forward is that we're going to see some democratization of data, but also some improvements in the privacy of data. So the reason there's a democratization is because the technology to do medical imaging is going to become a lot cheaper over the next 5 to 10 years. So a lot more people will have access to this. You'll be able to do your own research on yourself. I'm focused mostly on the just developing core technologies and not so much on the applications. So I think people will have to just sort of like figure that roadmap out together or by themselves, what the meaning of the data is. But it'll be a lot cheaper and you'll have access to it and it'll be secure and you'll be able to get great insights into yourself and even send AR and VR to your brain directly.
Hi. I was wondering if you could just offer a really quick primer on how action potentials work so that I can better understand. You were mentioning some of the, I guess the chemicals in the body are metal. Oh, yeah. And so I'm just trying to make sense of it all and maybe also understand how humans might be sensitive to ELF, extremely low frequency waves.
Okay, so action potentials, so when an action potential usually refers to when the axon of your neuron fires. It fires because the positive and negative charges in your cell body separated enough to such a significant extent that your cell, in order to maintain its equilibrium, must purge the difference between the positive and negative charges. And so you see this action potential, which basically result in your cell maintaining its equilibrium by shooting a surge of electrical activity along its axonal body. There's also action potentials that can take place in the dendrite. These are the ions that make up the separation of positive and negative charges are what's made out of metal, the calcium, potassium, sodium, and magnesium ions.
Wait, before his question, I just wanted to be clear about his answer because I grilled him on this for a half hour last week. Because I was like, metal, what are you talking about, metal? So it's actually, our bones are made up of calcium. The calcium's in there. Calcium is in the metals on the periodic table. So we have metal in our bones. There are organic material too. So we are really meat sacks and metal. We are meat and metal robots.
Well, I think the meat is all ionically charged, and it's helping to, as your axons are collectively creating electromagnetic waves that fly through your tissue. They're affecting the meat sacs. The meat sacs are helping to, in some sense, organize the electrical activity and receive those signals and further alter when other neurons are going to fire, further alter the equilibrium of other neurons in the brain in a continual loop of electromagnetic activity, of transmitting, receiving, and transmitting. And because the brain is trying to maintain its structure, it's constantly trafficking in these brainwaves.
Okay, cool. Okay, we have one. Does anybody else have a question after? Okay, we're gonna have one more question, and then we're going to take a 20-minute break to eat. There's hot dogs downstairs of all kinds too, you veggie and vegan people. Everybody's hungry, so we're gonna take a break. Okay, here's your question.
So how close to commercial deployment are we with this, and what areas do you see first usage?
So I've been describing sort of a spectrum of devices. Some of the technologies are already out on the market, and we're already experimenting with them. Mary Lou Jepson's revolutionary technology promises to come out, the early stuff, the alpha stuff in January for select people, and then within a year it's going to be commercially viable. The electrical impedance tomography has been on the market for a few years. It's still, like in the scope of the century of neuroscience, it's still like a brand new technology. But that is accessible now. We need to continue to develop that and take it to the next level. So this technology is it exists, it's in the market, and it's new stuff is coming.
Okay, great. So everybody, let's hear it for Michael Bloomberg. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so happy that it came. So I just basically, a lot of the things that I do with NoiseBridge, both with my virtual reality development of the museum, the Swartz Manning Museum, where I'm making the lives of just the stuff that I have, artifacts from Aaron Swartz, Chelsea Manning, and Timothy Leary. That's what's going to be in this virtual reality museum. And I basically get as far as I can, and I save up these questions, and then I go to GameBridge on Tuesday nights, and they just help me figure out everything that I need, because I'm building it in Unity, the gaming engine. And so, making an art gallery with a gaming engine, because that's just how you build VR. And NoiseBridge is just so wonderful about helping you with whatever you need to help on with your own project. It's a do-ocracy. They're just there to help you, and you can help them maybe. And they build things there. And then on Wednesday nights is brain interface night, brain computer interface night. And then Friday night is the other neuro hacker night. So there's always something going on, but I just really encourage you. It's a wonderful community. It's the way that things should be with education. We're going to look at some other interesting things with education a little later in the day. So right now what we're going to do, and everyone watching the webcast, I want to make sure you understood exactly what was happening, is that we're going to take a break, just a 20-minute break, so that we can eat and then get back up here. And so that's what is going on with the webcast. So we hope that you join us It's 2:20 now, and we will be back at 2:40. So we'll see you then. Thank you.
Check. 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 Check one. Check two. Check. 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 Check.
By the way, if you try to switch back to this right now, do you have the projector patching out? Yeah, you want to try?
So I have it going out to the HDMI right now.
It's a little loud though, just. Which is fine. Sound system is crazy. Same because of the Grateful Dead.
Oh yeah.
Rolling Stones is way overplay. I once showed a recut of Star Wars here, and when R2-D2 gets blasted by the Jawas and falls down,
yeah,
like it literally sounded like a bomb went off your phone and started cracking up. Like, okay, it's way too over.
A little too authentic. So I'm not getting.
Make sure that audio stops infinity.
Well, we were trying to just this to see if you want to.
Oh no.
Is that patch out now? Okay.
Try that again. That's good sound. Okay, so let me switch it over.
I hear it.
Sure, yes. If you go to that first slide.
Switch the audio source or output to HDMI to headphones.
Yeah. Wait, can you get the audio out of the HDMI now, you think? Okay. Okay, sure, let me give it a shot. Alright, I'm pulling the analog audio.
No, the HDMI.
Right, yeah. Okay. Alright, trying. Should be coming out of HDMI now, I think. I could try another HDMI device pretty easily.
It could be a setting rejected it, it just might not be worth it. I mean, as long as we use the headphones, and it's working to the.
Yeah, it's just we can make it so we don't have to do the audio. All right, I'm gonna try switching this device in.